Alright guys, we're back in my garage for another video. If you're new to the channel, I use these videos to help keep you updated on the latest developments related to our cars, as well as talk about technical discussions so that we have a better understanding of how our engines work. So if you're interested in videos like that, be sure to subscribe to the channel. There will be a lot more coming out in the future. So today we're going to be comparing the top 3 tuning platforms for the Gen 1 B58, Boot Mode, MHD, and MG Flasher. Now, I know there are a couple others out there, especially EcuTech. A lot of you guys really want me to compare to that, but keep in mind these 3 have been out for a lot longer than EcuTech, and they're also a lot more similar, so it's easier to compare these, and most questions kind of surround these 3 platforms. So potentially in the future, I can make an additional video comparing to EcuTech or one of the other tuning platforms that you guys are interested in, and that might give you a little more insight on what you should pay attention to. Now, in this video specifically, I'm not just going to tell you this is the best platform or this is the one that I'm going with. Instead, now that I've actually had experience with all 3, I'm just going to explain the differences that I've seen in my experience. And hopefully this gives you the information that you need to make that decision for yourself. Because ultimately your priorities are going to be different than mine. You're going to have different goals for your car and how you want to use it. So it's really important to focus on what you want in order to make that decision so that you'll be happy with it. All of them have satisfied customers, and it's really hard to go wrong with any one of the top 3, but I know this is kind of something that most people just want to make one purchase and make sure that they don't regret it. So let's go ahead and talk about it. First of all, we'll just talk about the businesses in general. So MHD has been tuning BMWs since 2015. They actually started on the E-Series cars, so for the N54 guys, this was a really big deal when they mostly only had JB4 and like Cobb tuning. This brought a proper flash tuning platform that had all the diagnostic and logging capabilities you would want. So they really liked that. But F-Series cars were out. They had brand new DMEs and required a different unlock. So it didn't work for them. Eventually, boot mode came out for F-Series BMWs in 2016. And they worked on N55 and S55 cars. So this is kind of their claim to fame. They were the first tuning platform for F-Series BMWs and pretty much took everything by storm at that time. But again, a new platform came out with the B58 engine. It had a new DME, it had new encryption, and eventually MG Flasher ended up jumping on board as one of the first tuning platforms to support the B58 in 2018. Now, after that, a little while later, boot mode came on in 2019, and then a couple weeks after that, MHD came as well. So now all of them tune on the B58. MG Flasher had a little bit of a lead time by a couple months, but they are all pretty much at the same point now. Now, all of them support Gen 1 and Gen 2 B58s, as well as F-Series and G-Series BMWs to a degree. For the Gen 1, F-Series and G-Series are pretty much the same, but for the Gen 2, they are only able to OBD unlock and flash DMEs that are before the June 2020 cutoff. You can check that with the tuning platform to make sure that you're able to be flash tuned directly. Otherwise, you're going to need a bench unlock or potentially an ECU clone in order to use these tools. Now, I know price is a really big factor if you're trying to budget for this, and boot mode is definitely the most expensive. But keep in mind, most people say that MHD or MG Flasher are like half the price of boot mode, when in my opinion, that's really not the case because boot mode is much more inclusive in their base pricing. So when you buy boot mode, you get the flashing license, the logging software, all the diagnostic tools, and one off-the-shelf map. Whereas with the others, you only really get the flashing license with the base price, and then you need to pay extra for the logging module. In my opinion, the logging module is key if you want to make sure that the tune is safe for your car. It really shouldn't be an option, so at a minimum, that's an additional purchase that you should make. And of course that makes the price a little bit closer between them because it's an additional $100+ for the logging module on MHD and MG Flasher. But even if you get like the full package with the super license and everything included, you're still going to pay the least with MHD. Then MG Flasher is a little more expensive, and then boot mode is a little bit extra on top of that. However, one thing that a lot of people don't realize is with boot mode, you can transfer your license. So if you want to transfer your license to another car, you can actually transfer it to another car that you own or sell it to somebody else and have the license transferred to another owner. So most people charge about half of the price of the original license, and then somebody else can basically pay half the price for the software and get it on their car. Now let's go ahead and talk about off-the-shelf maps, since I know that's what most of you really care about. Keep in mind, these tuning platforms are just tools to flash software onto your car. So even though the actual app is created, that's not the same as the tune. These companies actually outsource tuning for their off-the-shelf maps. So Boot Mode is actually using HC Performance for their off-the-shelf map tuning. MHD uses Pure Boost, and MG Flasher uses JR Auto. Now, these tuning companies also offer custom tunes. They all have their own websites and social media pages where you can see all of the different platforms that they tune, but that also means that they're extremely busy. So each platform also has a custom tuning network. And if you want to branch out, you can reach out to one of the custom tuners in their network for a map set up specifically for your car. The current standing that I see is that MHD has the biggest aftermarket tuning network. MG Flasher is pretty close behind, and then Boot Mode has the smallest. That's a real change from before because Boot Mode used to have the biggest network and MG Flasher used to have the smallest one. And then eventually a lot more people came on board with MG Flasher as it became more widely used. You're going to notice a split in how the tuners are kind of broken up. There are a handful that tune across all three platforms, but most people tune only Boot Mode or MHD and MG Flasher both. And there is a big difference between how the platforms are actually implemented. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but you'll kind of see that broken up. It's just based on how the tunes work. Now for off-the-shelf maps, we've got several different options. So stage 1 is designed for a completely stock car. Stage 2 is designed for a car with just a downpipe. And then they also have tunes for an upgraded high-pressure fuel pump. On Boot Mode, it's called Stage 2 Plus. On MG Flasher, it's called Stage 2.5. And on MHD, it's called Stage 2 HPFP. So it's all pretty much the same thing. They just each kind of use their own naming systems. They also offer different options for various fuel qualities. So they have options for 91 octane, 93 octane, and ethanol mixes. Keep in mind, Boot Mode actually has the most options currently. It actually can kind of be confusing because they've got Stage 1, Stage 2, Stage 2.0. And if you've got Stage 2.0, you might have a 93 or a 93 plus. So it makes it a little bit more difficult to decide which one is right for you. Ultimately, I usually recommend just trying the map that's closest to the fuel quality that you're using. And if you see excessive timing corrections or fuel pressure dips, then bump the map up or down accordingly just to make sure that you're keeping your car safe. Now, one thing that's very difficult for me to answer is when people ask me which off-the-shelf map is the best. Some people want to know which one is the fastest. Some people want to know which one is the safest. And some of you guys even combine them and you say which one is the fastest and the safest. Ultimately, none of the tuning platforms have a significant edge in how they implement their off-the-shelf maps. From my experience, they all are pretty much using the same parameters in your DME, adjusting your boost and your timing and AFRs and all of these details to try to get the most out of your car. However, the harder you push the car, the less safe it's going to be. And especially for an off-the-shelf map, the harder they push it, the less people it's going to work for. An off-the-shelf map is really only designed to get you going. It's just to take a little bit of an advantage of some aftermarket parts you put on your car, but it's not going to be the fastest or safest tune. You need a custom tune for that. So unfortunately, over the past year or so, we've kind of had some OTS map tuner wars where everybody's trying to up each other with slightly faster tunes, slightly higher ethanol mixes, and all of these different things. And it's making it more difficult for some people that don't have great fuel quality or don't have the best environmental conditions. So I'm hoping people stop asking for OTS map updates. I mean, obviously little options here and there to make it more fun or add in different features are cool, but just updating the maps and pushing them harder and harder doesn't make everybody faster. If anything, it makes it more dangerous and limited for some people that aren't in perfect conditions. Now, I will say, just from my research and my own experience, I've seen the fastest times on MG Flasher with pump gas maps, but with ethanol mix maps, I usually see the fastest times from Boot Mode and MHD. I know Boot Mode has E30 and E50, and MHD has E40, and people are trying to figure out which ethanol mix is the best. Again, it's really not that significant of a difference. You're maybe playing with like 5 or 10 horsepower max, and it's going to, again, be dependent on your specific car, conditions, engine mileage, all of those things. So just go with the setup that matches the fuel you have the best, log your car to make sure it's safe, and if you're just not able to get something that works properly, get a custom tune. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, I think I want to talk about the actual biggest difference that I've seen between the platforms, and it's how they're actually implemented. So Boot Mode, when it came out for the F-Series cars, it was pretty revolutionary because they introduced a cloud-based system. So everything is stored on the cloud and it's not stored on your local device. So that means if you get on any phone, any tablet, any computer, you can just log into your account and see all of your tunes, all of your logs, basically all the history and data for your specific car. So it's really, really convenient. I actually got boot mode first, and I've had it for the longest on my car out of the three. And I used to do things like run logs on the way to work with my phone. And then when I get to my computer, I can just open it up on the website and take a look at my logs. Or maybe I see like an Instagram post or something that we got some updated maps. So I can go into my computer, change the settings, and then when I get to my phone, I can just plug in and flash it right away. So it's really just convenient to have that level of access to your tuning platform. Of course, we're not the only thing that use cloud services. Like pretty much everybody is moving in that direction. So it was just like a really big advancement. Now, MHD and MG Flasher store everything locally on your device. So that means whatever phone or tablet you're using, everything is stored on its hard drive. So that means if I go to a different tablet or a different phone, if I break my phone or something happens where I lose it, I lose all of my data. I'm not able to access it anywhere else. So it's really important for people to basically manually back up your files. Usually I send my logs and all my tunes and everything in an email chain that I have, just so that I have the data stored somewhere. So it's something that you just want to kind of be aware of because it's really easy to lose it all if you change anything. Also, because everything's stored locally, it seems like these apps are always trying to connect to your car anytime you want to change something. So if I'm inside and I want to change my BURBLES or do something so that I can just go out to my car and flash it, it doesn't work. It always tries to connect to your car before you do anything. So you basically have to go to your car, plug in everything, and then you can change additional settings and stuff, or just look at what settings you have currently set up. So it just makes it a little bit more difficult, and it's not as ideal as having that ease of access with a cloud-based service. Now, on the opposite side, it is extremely fast to flash. Because everything is stored locally on your device, it just syncs up and goes. I do everything wireless, but I've heard when you have it wired, it's even faster. After having boot mode for almost 2 years, I'll definitely say that was the biggest thing that I noticed. With boot mode, it's getting a little bit better because you can download the files and set them up to flash offline, but I still think it does some extra checks that slow it down a little bit because it's trying to figure out where the file is stored if you have it locally, and then it tries to go through the steps of flashing it. But with MHD and MG Flasher, it's like almost instant, less than 60 seconds. So I really, really like that. Another thing that I do like is with their custom tuning process, you at least have a copy of every single custom map available to you. With boot mode, if you get a custom tune, you basically create a line of access and communication with the tuner in the boot mode app. So they can send you updated maps directly to your account through the cloud, and they can see all of your logs through the cloud as well. They basically can access your full account. However, every time they send you a new tune, it overwrites the old one. So when you log into your app, you're going to see, now you've got version 2 or version 3 in the place of that tune where it's held on your account. So it can kind of suck because if version 4 doesn't work very well and you're getting misfires or something, your tuner can make an update, but in the meantime, you don't have version 3 to flash back to. Whereas with MG Flasher and MHD, you're going to have that in your email or your WhatsApp chat or however your tuner's sending you files. So they're just more readily available. In boot mode, you basically have to remember to make a copy of every custom tune and every map that you download so that you have that backup in case when a revision comes out, it doesn't work as well for your car. And then the last thing is no system downtime. Some of you guys experienced that last year. Boot mode did like this big server transfer and it like shut down the app and you weren't able to update or do anything for a while, which really sucks. So just having everything local gives you complete control over how you do that. Less worry about, internet connection and all those things that can be an impact on a cloud-based service. With it all stored locally, you just always have everything you need. Now, I do think that this is a large reason why a lot of tuners are kind of split between whether they support boot mode or whether they support MHD and MG Flasher. If you're going to sign up for boot mode, that means that pretty much they have access to all of your data. So if you have any kind of special sauce that you use on the custom tuning side, all of that is shared directly through boot mode's app. So they're able to see whatever you're doing, and potentially that puts more risk on it, whereas you might see that as a special benefit or opportunity because you have something unique that you're able to do to get more power or more safety out of a car. So it really just depends on the tuner, how they actually work, but that is a large reason why some of them are split between those options. From a diagnostic standpoint, they're all pretty much the same. All of them have logging capabilities, although the log viewers are very different. I think the best log viewer in my opinion is boot mode. Of course, I've had the most experience with it, but it's the easiest for me to translate and understand. It makes it really easy for you to share links with people so that they can see your logs as well. And you can always download the CSV files and upload it somewhere else or manipulate it however you want. The next easiest one is MG Flasher. It's not as easy to share and show to other people, but in the app, it's pretty easy to use. It also works really well with your finger, kind of sliding it across the log to kind of see how things are performing. And then probably the most difficult one is MHD. It works, but you really have to know what you're looking for. You can't really see all of the parameters at the bottom at once, and the way that you kind of have to scroll across the graph and scroll through all the different options just makes it a little bit more difficult to use. So if you have MHD, usually I just say ignore that, download the CSV and upload it to Data's app. They all can scan for codes and they all show the data pretty well. I think MHD does a really good job of showing shadow codes. So potentially if you run into an issue and then it goes away, you can still see the shadow codes. Hopefully that'll give you an indication of what potentially went wrong. So I do really like that capability, but all of them can pretty much show all of the BMW 6-digit codes. They give you the information you need to diagnose problems. And they all have a dashboard for gauges, so whether you're logging or not, you can have your dashboard up, mount your phone on your dash somewhere, and see boost, timing, AFRs, oil pressure, fuel pressure, all of the different things you might care about at any given time. And just in general, all of the tune options are pretty much the same, except for one glaring missing option I will mention. But all of them have adjustable burbles, so you can turn them on or off. I've had them turned off on all the platforms without an issue. You can also do cold start reduction on all of them to basically disable the cold start sequence. Same thing, I've had them disabled on all of the platforms, no problem. You can also do the complete opposite, the GTS startup roar. I actually tried this once, but it was kind of hit or miss for me. I know it only really works when the car is already warmed up, and instead of doing the cold start sequence, it just revs really high and kind of burbles a little bit. So if you're into that, you can turn that on as well. They also have torque reduction settings, so if in certain gears you want to limit torque or limit boost, they all have implemented a strategy where you can basically manage wheel spin. So if you're getting a lot of spin in first gear, second gear, you can use the sliders to dial back your torque and help make sure that you maintain traction. They all also have max cooling mode, so because we have an air-to-water intercooler, the way that the water pump works is variable, and you can basically set it to the highest demand option all the time to help optimize your cooling. So this is really just kind of on an as needed basis. I think most people don't need it, but a lot of people like to use it just to make sure that they have the best performance possible. And then from the latest updates, pretty much over winter, everybody got map switching, everybody got ANTILAG. ANTILAG is probably the most aggressive on MG Flasher with like the actual bangs and flames and stuff. On MHD is probably the least aggressive. Mostly you just hear the turbo spool. It doesn't really make as much noise as the others. I kind of prefer that, obviously, with no burbles and cold start reduction. I'm not a big fan of the extra noise for most stuff, so for me that works really well. But the last detail is FLEXFUEL, and this has come out on MHD, it has come out on boot mode, but unfortunately it is not out on MG Flasher yet, which is really strange because they were one of the main ones to get all of these on-the-fly options. They implemented map switching first, all the sport cooling mode stuff first. They even have extra options for changing burbles on the fly and a lot of different settings, but they still haven't gotten FLEXFUEL. So that's a really big gap in my opinion. At this point, it's pretty much expected, and most people are looking for FLEXFUEL kits to flip their cars over to FLEXFUEL as quickly as possible. So I really hope MG Flasher comes out with that in the future. Now, the last couple differences I do want to mention for boot mode. Like I said, I had this one for the longest. I had it for about 2 years. I switched to MG Flasher for a couple months and then ended up going back to boot mode. And then finally I landed on MHD. Now the things that I miss about boot mode is that you were able to basically disable codes in the tune yourself. So obviously I have a lot of sensors disconnected and things on my car. And basically I want to be able to disable codes for emissions and just other things that I know aren't really a problem, but it'll throw a check engine light. With MHD, I have to basically have my custom tuner build that into the tune. So unfortunately, I'm not able to do it myself like I am on boot mode. And another big thing that a lot of people like about it is it has a built-in map editor. So you don't need separate tuning software to dial in your maps. You can use the built-in editors. It starts you off with the stock tune, and you can manipulate it and try out as many flashes as you want once you enable that feature on your account. So it's just kind of a really nice tool for people that are maybe a little more on the amateur level but want to play with their cars. Keep in mind it also can be very dangerous, but that's something that you can use as a learning tool or something to test things out before you send it out to other customers, even if you're an experienced tuner. However, probably the biggest reason why I ended up switching to MHD and landing on it is the reflex integration. And I know most of you know, but for those of you that don't, Motive Reflex is basically the best port injection and auxiliary fuel controller on the market. So when I added port injection onto my car, I used the Motive Reflex as a tuner, and I was very hesitant to make that jump. I actually really didn't want port injection on my car. But with the Reflex, it makes it a lot easier to tune and dial in. And with the MHD integration, it makes it much safer because MHD is going to monitor parameters on the Reflex and throw a check engine light if something is wrong. I actually already ran into this because I mistakenly disconnected something on my Reflex without realizing it. And when I drove my car, I had no power, I barely had any boost, and I had to check engine light. And when I scanned for codes, it showed instantly what the problem was. And that's just really, really helpful for me because I know if I'm on a road trip or something goes wrong while I'm out and about, it'll automatically put the car into a safe mode where I can drive it home without causing any issues. So for me, that's the biggest aspect to it. Obviously, if you don't have port injection, then that won't be as big of a deal. But that's kind of why I ended up landing on MHD, and that's what I expect to run for the foreseeable future. So yeah, I know that was a whole lot to digest. Hopefully that made sense to you guys. If you have any additional questions, definitely leave them down in the comments below, and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. Or maybe we'll make like a follow-up part 2 video with any extra things that I missed. But hopefully you guys found this helpful. Again, focus on you and your car. It doesn't matter what your buddy does. It doesn't matter what the internet says. Your specific setup, fuel quality, everything is going to be unique for you. So focus on what you like and what your priorities are and go from there when you're picking a tuning platform. So yeah, that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope this helps. And if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below.